Welcome back to the run home. Well, it's a massive game on Friday. The Sydney Kings, of course, staying in town to take on the Perth Wildcats. And how lucky am I, mate? I sit here with two royalties from the NBL, yourself and the great man.
No, there's only one royalty here when it comes to basketball. Six-time NBL champion, six-time NBL coach of the year. The GOAT when it comes to coaching in this country. Brian Goorjian live in the studio, donning his Sydney Kings outfit. And, of course, his bum bag. How are you, mate? Well, it's got to get him up to the microphone.
Get me up to the microphone, get my headset on. How many press conferences have you done throughout your career, Brian?
I'm trying to get organized here. But no, enjoying every bit of everything. You know, really good to be here for that. The event was Hoops Fest was fantastic, and again, we're staying for the week and preparing for a really exciting game.
Now, at the start of the show, I got to praise Hoops Fest. I absolutely loved it, but I'm removed from the game. I get to enjoy it as a spectator, called a couple of games as a commentator. The reality is I wasn't preparing for a game as a coach or a player. How was it received from a player's perspective or a coach's perspective with so much going on across the last 5 or 6 days?
Again, I'm in a mindset of being involved in the league for the amount of time I have and coming back and what's gone on in Australian basketball and how great the NBL is. And I've been like, again, China, Korea, Taipei, everybody's talking about the NBL, the decisions they've made of making this a world sport now, everybody around the world watching it. I think this event adds to it. You know, you come to an event like this, you got all the teams there. I've just had the New York Knicks, Charlotte Hornets, with the guy with the Washington Wizards, around the game, watching our players play. We've got players from all over the world playing in it and getting everybody together in one place and having another game that matters and getting an eye on everybody in here, sharing ideas, growing. I enjoyed the Blitz. I enjoyed this immensely and look forward to the game against Perth on Friday night.
Before we get into the game against the Wildcats, you mentioned all the NBA scouts that are in town. We're going to have one on the show tomorrow, Adam Tatalovic, who you know well. Yeah. I want to ask about Alex Tui because he's a next star. He's definitely turning heads with the NBA scouts. But he went over to America, decided not to declare for the draft, worked on his individual skill set. And in the preseason, he was one of the best players. And now we see him out there making some nice moves yesterday in your win over Adelaide as well. But how have you seen Alex's progression? And you know a lot of NBA players, scouts, GMs. Could you see him taking that next step?
For sure. I mean, when you talk to the scouts, and one of the things that you get concerned about is too quickly. Mm-hmm. People, oh, he's a first round. Oh, he can't miss. Oh, it's early. But all you can say is the progression. In what I saw last year, not working last year, and nothing but watching NBL games, and coming into Boomer Camp and inviting him, Henshaw, Rocco into that camp. And really, when you looked at the wings playing, Matisse Thybulle, Josh Green, that group of guys, it was like he looked like he was part of the selection. And from what I'd seen in the season before, just his body. He'd done an amount of work on his body. He'd gotten better at the shot. And then you started talking to him. He stationed himself in Newport Beach and worked out all day, came in with a lot of confidence. And again, they're young. And it's an important time now of getting the right, training, mindset, work ethic, all of those aspects, good family, hard worker. He's got all those ticked. And just in the amount of time that I've been associated with him, the growth in his game, he's getting much better off the dribble. He's getting much more confident. He's becoming a better defender. And I think, I do think the sky's the limit for him. It's a big step, but I think he's positioning himself strongly for the draft and has the possibility of going pretty high.
The other name you mentioned there is Perth Wildcats player Benny Henshaw. How have you seen him so far, albeit early into the season? But he put together a nice preseason. He spent some time with you in camp with the Boomers. Is it similar to how you reflected just then on Alex Tui?
Very much so. And his name came up, constantly. And again, I was out of the scene, coming back, and he didn't play a lot last year, and you didn't see him. So he came into camp, and I had him in the series, the window against Korea, and I thought, God, man, he's quick, and he's fearless. It was a really close game, really tough game, and he was fearless with the ball, risk taking, made plays, took big shots, and this guy's got a bright future. He was a little at the Boomer camp. He was a little light in the pants.
Yeah.
That's, you realize how big Josh Giddey, Dyson Daniels, those guys are. So he's physically getting manhandled a little bit. But I thought coming into that, his mindset on the questions he asked, sitting down, Coach, what do I need to do? What should I add to my game? I want to play in this. How do I grow? How do I get better? And you walk away and you go, around it, he was always shooting the ball. Always, if he wasn't involved in the scrimmage, he's over working out. He's asking the assistant coaches to work him out. You go, this kid's a baller. And now you see him in this, and when him and Pepper get into the game, just that last bit together, I thought they were really exciting. And he does have that. He's a big money player in Europe. That kind of that kind of into the NBA or an NBA future. But he's an elite talent.
You mentioned a little light in the pants. Actually, that's what Hayes used to get referred to, but in a different sense in the AFL. But sorry, Hayes, go, mate.
Well, I want to ask about the big money offers from Europe. You just mentioned it. We've lost John Mooney and Nick Kay in recent times, and you've spoken about the growth of the NBL. Do you feel in 5 to 10 years' time that might not happen, where we catch up to some of those other leagues financially? I know we're there sort of in terms of talent, but in terms of financially, will we be able to afford those players?
That's the hope. And it's funny, when I left the Gong, my vision was a Euro League of Australia and Asia. And now you start adding these teams in this competition. Now the sponsorship, the TV package, all of this starts to happen, which will mean our players get paid more. And I think in some form, in the next 5 years, it's going to go that way. And when the scouts, I always take it, I've known a lot of these NBA scouts through China or through Korea, been around them in the United States, and all of them, how beautiful is Australia? Man, how nice is Perth? My God. I have to go to some places, and it just drives me nuts. When this is on my calendar, I jump for joy. Well, it's the same with players. It's the same with players, international players, guys playing in China, guys playing in Japan. They'd much prefer to play here, and they'd take less to play here. And I know guys like Nick Kay. That's the goal of this thing, is to bring those. If they're not playing in the NBA, we want them playing in the NBL. From a basketball standpoint, it's a winner from them. For lifestyle, it's a winner from them. And we don't have to pay as much, but we just got to be a little more competitive. And as I say to you, just what's going on in the NBL right now, and what that it is. I always feel like with what's going on right now when I'm at the Blitz and I'm here, the biggest thing that stands out to me is not just the basketball court, but around it, we are tapping into it's a world sport. Where I used to always come here, it drove me nuts as an American, starting in the NBL, and everybody saying, trying to compete with, when I was with the Magic and the Tigers, that battle, going, we got the best show in town. And though Australian sport, Aussies, Australian rules football, it's the number one sport. It's Australia's sport. Well, we're a world sport. And we've never been able to exploit that. And now I think what's just gone on at the Blitz and here, and you look at the product and the people in the stands, we're exploiting that.
You're one of the great coaches of all time in Australia, not just basketball, in any sport. In terms of being a mentor, there's no doubt you mentored a lot of coaches across your career, but who are some of your mentors, and have you had a cross-code relationship with other coaches across Australia?
So when I started in it, in coaching, it was I went to America, and I did a 5-day course, and the guy said to me, when you go back there, Aussies like their camper vans, They like their holidays. He'd done clinics over here. They're great people. They're lovely. They love their beer. Go over there and burn them down. Burn them down. Outwork them. And you know, Dan, I think I had that reputation when I started in the coaching of, they train 2 hours a day, we're going to train 4 hours a day. They train 3 days a week, we're going to train 5 days a week. They're on the golf course, we're working out. That was the mindset back then. And I learned that, and that was how I started my program, and get the young, make them better, develop skill, all that. But the other side of it was find a sport in Australia that they're great at, and become more confident, grow. And sports overlap. So I went in Australian rules football, and I remember one of the first ones was David Parkin, Tony Shaw, Wheaton. When I was in Sydney, Paul Roos. And when I started, even with the Boomer Camp, my strength coach came out of Australian rules football. Our teamship, which, it's real, as an American, you grow up playing sport, and it's like, if we get along, great. If we don't, get your 15 points and 10 rebounds and shut up. Australian rules sport is, if you don't have that teamship, it's kind of a law here. You ain't winning nothing. So that side of it, when I started with the Boomers, Ray McLean from Collingwood, out of there. So 100%. And I can't, it's a rivalry that we have for players, that we have for survival. But I think Australian rules football has been wonderful to me. And the coaches, the players, there's been a synergy there that has been really helpful. I've grown a lot. The individual work, the teamship, strength and conditioning, and even, they've taken a lot from us. The zoning, transition, they're even starting, the game is becoming, from back in the day to how it's played now, much more basketball orientated, and our athletes overlap a lot more than they used to.
That's why it's so congested, Marto, because we followed basketball and soccer.
Is that Nick Popovich? He had an AFL background. Is that who you're talking about with strength and conditioning?
No. The strength and conditioning, and Nick Popovich is one of the best.
Yeah.
And, he was at the Sydney Kings when I came there. But Bowden Babachek.
Oh, Bowden, of course.
Was
from
with
Hawthorn.
Hawthorn.
David Anderson used to fly him around the world, part of the Australian Boomers, but then in the off-season, he'd fly Bowden over to Russia, to, France, Italy, wherever he was playing. He just said he helped prolong my career and helped me run. So, a great person. I forgot about him, but he was a huge part of those early Boomers days. You're back where you belong, Gorge. In Sydney with the Kings. I absolutely love seeing it, but a story you just reminded me of when you said, get me my 15 and 10 and then move on. Can you confirm or deny this? Now, we have a segment called Take It or Leave It. Take It or Leave It. This happened once at an airport. Ebby Ara, absolute stud. And he was at the airport. Bags are coming out from the carousel. He's told a couple of the development players, hey, go grab my bag. Graham Dan, not a star, one of the younger fellas. So he also took it upon himself to go to the development player, hey, grab my bag as well. Gorge stopped him and said, come here. Go get your own bag. He said, but Ebby's got it. He goes, yeah, but Ebby gets me 25 and 12 and 2. Then give me that, then go get your bag. Take it or leave it. That happened.
True story.
One of the discussions we were having before we went to air was the depth of teams these days. Gone are the days where you'd have two superstars playing 35 minutes a game, a couple of role players, maybe you play 6 or 7. I look at this Sydney Kings roster, and credit to you guys for what you did in the off-season. You went out and got some of the best young up-and-comers who are graduating from college, Kelly Lepepe, Tyler Robinson, Jason Spurgeon. You bring back 2 former league MVPs in Adams and Cooks. But there's only 40 minutes in a game. There's only 5 spots on the court. How do you try and play that juggling game of keeping everyone happy but also doing whatever it takes to win?
Well, everyone's asking me that same question, and my mindset has always been, I'm not trying to keep everybody happy. I think we have in it. I think a really important thing, and my father said this to me when I started in coaching, and I was, Ronaldson, I'd have those guys to my house all the time. My dad said, those guys are fine. You got to spend more time with the guys on your bench. And so I just feel like if you're good in it. I was asked this with Tui. You're bringing in this guy, you're bringing this guy. It's going to affect his draft right. I go, if he's an NBA player, and he's going to be an NBA player, first round pick, he ain't going to have a problem playing for me. He's not going to have a problem with playing time. So I think you get what you deserve. And right now, with the way this schedule is and the games that are going on right now, the guys that deserve to play are going to play, and those role players will get their time. And the guys that need to be developed will be developed. And I hope the attraction for us, I think, is the environment. You're going to come here and you're going to get better. And if you get better here, and you don't want to stay here, well, we've helped you move to the next spot. But my deal is to be honest with them, and to keep communicating with them and look at them and see that they're getting better. And if they get good enough, they're going to get on the court. And my father was like that, and I'll never forget Lindsey Gaze on, when I first started with him, and they were talking about how many imports. And he goes, if it was me, I'd let everybody play here. And I'm the national coach. He goes, because the Australians that can play, my son, Vlahov, they're going to play. And the other ones that don't play need to get better to get on the court. And that's what the sport's about. And so I always, I'm not sitting here now worried, are they happy? I'm more, hey man, you're going to, like the guys that didn't play this week, they're going to work their asses off. And you need to work your ass out and be ready to play. And when you play better, and you'll get to play more.
I want to go play for him right now. If you actually, there's an aura about you, Gorge. When you walked in, I gave you a cuddle. It's great to see you. But if you told me to run sprints right now, I feel like I would say yes and do whatever it took. But in saying that, you're now at the Kings, where part of the ownership group is Andrew Bogut, who obviously you have coached before. What is it like when you've got someone who looked up to you and probably still does in many ways as a mentor, now essentially is your boss?
I'll tell you, I've said this numerous times coming back to this, that you need help in this now. I didn't want that guy before. I don't need a guy to assemble my roster. I know what I'm doing. I got this covered. The rules in this thing now, how you deal with the young in this communication, and when Andrew Bogut and Luke Longley, I've come into this, and we go here. We have Luke comes and spends 3 days with us. We go to the Gold Coast. Bogut comes to each game. What he says to you is they're no dummies. Pearls of wisdom, and you don't always agree, but it's great conversation. And to have those two guys around the club, I don't think any other team. There's a lot of things that you admire, from others, and that you're trying to grow at and whatever. But I always look, those two are something the other teams don't have. And and they're both completely different dudes, completely different guys. One's a human fist fight, and you're going to go at it. And the other guy's the gentle giant of all time. Luke, when he comes up, we kind of share apartments. We had a funny story that, he came into the kitchen, and I got out of bed, and I went to the kitchen, and he turned around, and he goes, he's about this far, and he's a funny dude. He turns around, and he goes, am I in your space? And I looked at him, and I go, when you're in the bedroom, you're in my space wherever you are in the house. He's a big guy. But no, they're a real plus, both of them.
Question from Kimbo. Ask Brian, when is Paddy Mills coming to play for him at the Kings to finish his career?
I see Paddy more owning a team someday and playing he's done his Olympics this year. And when he came back, and he didn't play a lot, and there was that concern, I was blown away by a guy that hasn't lost a step yet at the age that he's at. And now to get that next contract, and you're looking at, this guy's going to end up playing till he's 38, 39. And he definitely has a mindset and a care for Australia and the Indigenous community and Australia as a whole. And I see him someday, politics in some form. And I could see him owning a franchise sometime, actually playing on my team. I don't see that happen.
A young Joe, a young Paddy, you took both of them to their first Olympics. You're also there for what looks like will be their last Olympics. What about the growth of those two guys as individuals and men, not just as basketball players? What has it meant to you?
Boy, It's when I started with the Boomers, the Sydney Olympics, it works in 4-year cycles. And if there's been a screw up in basketball, one of the major ones was the Sydney Olympics when everyone retired at the same time.